Yeah, man. We are live. It is Monday night with Elliott Hulse. Elliott, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Tony. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. This is a great honor, and I am just so excited to have you here, man. I've met you in person a few times. We've hung out a few times, so this means a lot to me that you're here tonight. Um,
Awesome, brother.
yeah, first thing I want to talk to you about is and introduce you as a patriarch. I want to introduce you as a strong man and a leader of men. And that's the way I see you. And I think that's important in today's world. I think that's very, very important, those three titles. And I think you've earned those, and that is you for sure, in my opinion. I think the first question is I want to ask you is, what do you want the world to see when they see Elliott Hulse?
I like the first word you used to describe me, patriarch. I love that term, and it's kind of been more stuck in my mind lately since speaking at the Patriarch event, 21 convention, with Anthony and those guys. Actually, where I met you, because we live in a world that's so lacking father energy. The father archetype has been destroyed, defamed, and is deformed in it, or we're living in a deformed way. All right, so patriarch, I like that. I like that idea because I got 4 children. I am a father. I had a strong father, still have a strong father. You met my father.
Yeah.
And so, besides being embodying it, right, because it's my life, I know that it's something that the world needs more of. So there you go.
Yeah. And why do you say the world needs more of? Because another thing I have here is it's a man's world. And when I say that,
Well, look at families.
yeah. Yeah.
They don't exist anymore. Fatherlessness is the real plague on this country, right? I don't know the percentage, but there's a significant percentage of young men that grow up without their fathers in their home, divorce, babies out of wedlock, no dads. And if there is a father, he's mocked. He's mocked because the media mocks masculinity. So you see Homer Simpson and Bill Cosby and all the fools on TV I end up growing up with that represented what a father is supposed to be, and they're usually they're dumb or they're slow or they're devious, right? So we're mocked in the media, but then in the home, because we have no real role models, most fathers were fatherless and had this demented description of fatherhood through the media that even if you did have a father in the home, he was weak. We're weak. We don't know how to be fathers. We don't know how to be leaders. We really don't have any strong patriarchal examples to live by. And that's why I say that.
Why do you think media portrays the father as weak?
Because if you make men weak, women don't have any righteous example to follow. So they end up following or being guided by or being lulled in and lulled to sleep by the government. And so this is a Marxist plot that has been unfolding for probably since Adam and Eve for the longest time, but since the 1918 Bolshevik Revolution, Eastern Europe fell to communism, and they've been trying to turn the West communist ever since. And they're getting pretty damn close right now. I mean, we're almost there. But it came in through Marxism and cultural, specifically cultural Marxism. And so Antonio Gramsci and Mark Lucas, the two self-proclaimed founders of cultural Marxism, understood that if you were going to have a communist takeover of the West, you weren't going to do it with bombs and bullets, and aggression the same way they did it in Russia. They knew they were going to have to subvert. They were going to have to subvert us. That means like sneak in our brains and pervert us from the mind out. And so by getting into the government, by getting into the institutions, the universities, the media, so on and so forth, the church, totally run by Marxists, they would be able to overturn the culture into what we have right now, which is weak, soft men and feminist women. And so that was a part of the plan with the subverters, was to swap gender roles, namely so that they could destroy the family. Why destroy the family? So that you can get the women and children dependent on the state, right? So that's, I mean, long story short, we're living in the reverberations of that plot over 100 years ago to get us to where we are today, where because we have a little cold going around the country, we're going to lock everything down. And basically now we're adopting communism. So in a way, you could say they're about to win.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. How have you evolved? Okay. When you first got married, did you ever consider yourself, I don't know if anybody has asked you this, have you ever considered yourself a weak man or taken by social media and what's going around?
Yes, very much so. It's so funny when I think back of some of the ways I thought and acted, behaved. I was such a beta male. It took me until age, I think a man starts to turn the corner when he atones with his father. And this is archetypical. This is something that we anthropologists have understood about the development of men. And for a man to finally actually be able to stand in himself as a man, he has to atone with his father. Either means forgive him or come to know himself through him. And that didn't happen for me until I was age 27. And I was still a beta male. Thinking all kinds of wrong thoughts, but mainly because of how the world turned me against my father. My father is an alpha male. My father grew up in Belize. My dad lived by the law of the jungle. He didn't have shoes on. It was like, live or die. So when he came to America, he was a very different kind of man than like my neighbors' dads or my friends' dads and stuff. They were all betas. My dad was alpha. And that contrast, I was able to see that contrast, and I resented my father because he wasn't being what American dads were, right? American dads portrayed through the media, and then of course my friends' dads, they were all slapdicks. So my dad was all up my ass. He was like disciplined, and and he didn't let us get away with bullshit and things of this nature. So because of that, I grew resentment towards an alpha male, and I didn't know it at the time because I was seeing my father through the lens of the culture, even through the eyes of my mother in ways. I have a great mother and my parents have a great relationship, but one of the worst things that can happen for a man is to see his father through the eyes of his mother, because she has a totally different lens. And so you have to be able to finally at some point be able to see your father as he is, for all of his good and all of his bad, to be able to really renounce the blue pill ideologies and recognize that they were wrong. I'm lucky I had an example of my father. When I started to understand this contrast between blue pill and red pill, that's when I really woke up. I was like, oh shit, I've had the example of an alpha male in my life this whole time. I didn't even notice it, because we're living in a sea of beta, and when you see a shark, you gotta run, you gotta cry, you gotta fight. And this is this whole push against patriarchy. Patriarchy literally means fathers rule. So you want a father that's strong. You want a father that can rule. We got to be fathers that are strong, that can rule, right? Not in this egalitarian sense where men call their wives partner, right? There's no partner. There's hierarchy. That's the way God set it up. Man is the head, woman is the body, right? And one is no good without the other, but one is the leader, one is on top. And so it needs to be understood.
Why do you think people knock that way of living? Why do you think it's so frowned upon? What is making that big change? Because when you say that to people, and that men are leaders, men are the leader of the family, right now it is pushed back in your face the second you say that. Why do you think it's happening? Where is it coming from?
Marxism. It's been over the past 100 years. In order to topple the family, they had to pervert the gender roles. And you pervert the gender roles by eliminating religion. Religion is what teaches us how we know how to live in certain ways, right? There are laws for our proliferation, for our goodness, for our growth, for our evolution, right? So God explains it, he lays it out, but it's also biological, and we've always known that because the man is a stronger vessel, right? The only thing the Bible can do is give us tips on how to fulfill that role. But the woman has always been the secondary, the weaker vessel, right? It's just the way it is. It's not good or bad, and it's not even. It doesn't even take value away from one or the other. It's not even about the value. It's about hierarchy. Hierarchy has nothing to do with value because there's tremendous value in the body, right? Like the body and head. There's a hierarchy, but one's not more valuable than the other. You need both. But anyway, I'm trying to convince people to think a way that we thought 100 years ago. It was with this subversion of the American culture by the cultural Marxists that we now have fourth wave, basically, feminism. And the reason why you see this, just a fight for being able to vote, which that's a slippery slope to fourth wave feminism, where let's not have men on the planet at all. Where was I going with this? Yeah. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So it's been a slippery slope. Who's in charge? Like, who's the leader? Right. They had to turn us against each other. It's the Marxists. It's 100 years is the answer.
I want to go back to your dad. Now, one of the most inspiring, we'll say, dual speeches I have ever seen, and I mean this from my heart, was when you and your dad were on stage at 21 Convention.
Yeah.
That was incredible to me. The passion in your father was unlike anything I have seen almost in any man. And I mean that in a big, big way. I know I walked you guys up to the 21 report after that and talked with your dad. And when I saw you guys, what that said to me is any man alive, father or son, would want that connection that I saw with you and your dad. Now, I have a strong connection with my father, 85 years old. So when I saw that, it did bring me back to my deep connection with my dad. So tell me about like your connection with your dad, because I would encourage anybody to look at that at 21 Studios. It's the speech. So I don't even want to call it a speech. It's a conversation with you and your father. And it was one of the most intense conversations that I ever saw. And the way your father spoke to the audience, it was like he's done this for 100 years. It was incredible to me.
Yeah. My dad's charismatic. And that's one of the gifts that he passed on to me. Yeah. He's charismatic. He's got charisma. And with people who have charisma, it's a slippery slope, because it's not about what we're saying, it's how we say it. So we could say some crazy shit and people be like, yeah. Because we know how to deliver it. And my dad's a deliverer. I grew up watching my dad and his brothers sit around the table. And of course they were drinking. And they would just start arguing with back and forth. I mean, the whole table would be an uproar. And like, it was just a big drama. And I remember like my grandmother would get upset when they started doing that, talking loud and they're fighting and stuff. And then they would just stop and they would just love each other and they would just hug each other. It was like, all right, well, it's over. I'll see you next time, brother. All right, man, get home safe. It was the wildest thing to see these guys not be attached. They were emotional. They're emotional, but they're not attached. It's the craziest thing. They're emotional, meaning like charismatic, but detached, meaning like, but it don't mean anything anyway. I'm just having a good time. That's all it was, just having a good time. That's what I'm doing. I make these videos and shit when I'm, just talking to you right now. I'm rambling and ranting and shit. I'm just having a good time, right? Just like hearing myself talk, and people want to hear me talk and they want to talk with me. So we're having a good time.
That's exactly it. And anybody watching right now, I'm going to open up the live panel probably in about 30 minutes. So you can come on live and ask Elliott anything you want to ask him. So that's coming up soon. But I want to talk to you about your group of men. You work with a group of men, and anybody watching, I have all Elliott's links in the description of the video. So your strength camp, your regular YouTube, and also your Instagram. And I know that people can message you. I believe it's the word king, and join your group of men. But there's a certain question I want to ask you. It's about accountability. Why do certain men need to be held accountable? And I want to ask you this question also. Is it possible for you just to hold yourself accountable?
No, it's not. We all have to be held accountable. We all have to be held accountable. And this is a part of the human experience. This is something where throughout all time, all recorded history, cross-culturally, there's an understanding that there's a higher power. There's more people. I heard a statistic the other day, it was mind-boggling, but it was this guy that was making a point to atheists. He was like, of all the people through all of recorded history, said all the people throughout all of recorded history believed in God. He said up until he said like during the Enlightenment, maybe 200 years ago was the Enlightenment, right? 200 years ago, French Revolution, so on and so forth, and then atheism started to take hold. And so just the past 200 years, this idea that has only been adopted by maybe 40%, maybe 30% of the population, means that for the most part we believed in God. Part of the reason why we believe in God is because we need an authority. We understand that there's an authority. Did I lose you? I'm over here talking to myself.
That's just you.
There. Oh, there you are. Oh, I stopped. Oh, no, there you are. You made yourself disappear.
No, I just put you on solo layout. That's all. So I'm talking. That's all. So.
Oh, no, I want to talk to you. We talking, you and me talking. I got to see you if we talking. Freaked out. I'm just looking at myself. I'm like yelling into a mirror. Anyway, I was on a rant about how humans have always believed in God, and it's kind of a new thing. And if you're like 0.4% of all human beings that ever lived, you're not that smart. Don't think yourself too smart. Anyway, why? There's a myriad of different reasons why, but there are different points that are of value, right? One of the points that's of value for human beings to cohabitate on this planet with one another, with the planet itself and with the animals and whatnot, is humility. Humility, right? Knowing our place in things. That's what humility means. It means know your place in things. And so we have dominion over this planet. But there's more, there's a guiding principle above us, right? And so with that understanding and with the revelations that we've gotten through religious scripture, myth, and whatnot for thousands of years, man has always been held accountable to whatever you want to call it, Mother Nature, because she was going to come back and you're going to get what you sow, or to God the Father, however you want to look at it. But we've always been accountable to something, because this is why in certain religions they wear a head covering. Most religions they wear a head covering because it's out of reverence of understanding that there's a limitation on me. That's what a head covering in religion means. It means I place a limitation on myself, because if we become too prideful, this whole thing will fall apart. And that's why, it does fall apart, because we always end up being proud anyway. We end up being proud anyway. So it's a good idea. It keeps us in check to be accountable, every single man, especially if you're a king. Those are the guys that was most accountable to God. Think about King David, King Solomon. There's no man above them but God, right? And that's why they go down in history as these men, these great men, portrayed in the Bible. They weren't perfect men either, though. And even you look at that. Look at David. David screwed up. David, I don't know if you know the story, but it's not good. That was kind of messed up what he did. And Solomon too is like, bro, he's fornicating with all these. He's adulterous. That's what it is. With all these false gods. He's like marrying all these women and letting them bring in their gods. Right? He kind of he polluted the whole kingdom. But they were held accountable to one and one only, and that was God the Father. So yeah, it's a part of our deal. We need it.
That's going to lead me into another great question, which is ego. Is ego good or bad? And I want to ask you, when is it time, or should you kill your ego?
Ego is like having a body. It's neutral. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you have a body, you have an ego. The ego is the soul's interface with the world around us. So it's our interface with, like things, right? Because it's a part of my body. but it's also how I interface with you. Because my body, when I'm speaking with you, you see my body. That's why I want to see your body. My ego wants to see your ego, right? It's like our two interfaces are coming together, but behind is the soul. You got the soul, I got the soul. But hey, we have to, because we live in a fallen world, meaning a dense world, we have to take, there's a lot of soul here. There's a lot of soul there. There's a whole lot going on. But in order for me, I can't come to a whole world with all my soul, right? That'd be crazy. It'd be a mess. We wouldn't communicate, right? Even if you speak a language, that's a function of the ego. That's where it comes from. I gotta bring it down into this flesh suit and see and speak to you face to face. That's the ego. That's what the ego is. Now, we have to have a right relationship to the ego. We got to recognize that, look, this is not actually me. My persona, right? What I'm approaching you with, that's not really me. There's a whole lot of demons and angels back there. You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I see the soul. Now, if I have an unresourceful attachment to it, that means that I think that I'm it, and then what happens to it or how someone judges it, I can be too wrapped up in and forget that I'm actually a soul. So it's an unresourceful attachment. And look, this world is made to distract us from our soul. Everything distracts us from our soul. We are very much in our ego all day long. Very rarely. Some people never are with their soul. Maybe when they go to sleep at night and that's it. But if you can't sit still, quietly, watching the sunset, all you know is the chatter of your ego, the chatter of the world that you're taking into your ego through watching and listening and all that. A resourceful relationship to the ego is one where you can let it die. That's, I know you asked me about what does it mean with ego death. Ego death just simply means that part of me needs to die because it's outdated software for this new part of my life, right? Like as life takes you on your journey, as you're going along, you're growing and things are happening. Some parts of you from yesteryear is that doesn't work anymore. That you're making your life bad. That was good for back then, but you gotta let that go now. You gotta stop being that guy because life is asking you to be something else. And so ego death or even a partial death to something that, I guess because this all happens over time, you die to pieces of that ego. You're like, look, I can't behave that way any longer. I can't think that way any longer. That's an outdated paradigm. I need to upgrade my ego. So the ego needs like software updates.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, software update. It's funny because like there's something I had said on a couple streams here, probably it's been a few months ago, but we talk about all the pills, okay, whether it be blue pill, red pill, purple pill. And I had said in a certain stream that I'm the Tony pill. And the Tony pill is being able to adapt, and it has to do with adapting to things. So that's kind of what you're saying. It's killing your ego when you need it. It's also accountability, and it's also being authentic. So there's 3 A's in the Tony pill. And I'm kind of proud of those because I think being able to adapt is part of killing your ego. I think that's real important. And I think that's what you said, a few minutes ago, but outdated software, being able to adapt. And when I say adapt, I don't want anybody to think that adapting means adapting to a new world order. No, it means adapting. To me, it means adapting to the truth, because I think that's a big issue in what we have going on here.
Just wear the mask. 15 days, exactly. To slow the spread. I get it. I know.
That's not what I mean by
adapting and adopting.
Yeah.
Adapting means you still you and you're navigating. Adopting means you've been bought. When somebody's adopted, now they're yours. That's it. You all the way in. So you're adapting, but those are people that just adopt it. They adopt that MWO schema.
Yeah. Another thing I want to talk to you about is the manosphere. You are part of the manosphere, and I call it, whether it's by osmosis, but you're under that umbrella of masculinity, of manhood, of patriarchy. Okay? I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and it's about the manosphere and the complete umbrella of the manosphere. How has the manosphere helped men?
Well, first I think I need to define like manosphere, right? It's, if I understand you correctly, it's a realm of information that has been spread and shared amongst men through the internet, which is fairly new. There is a, this is interesting, man, because traditionally men, when a boy becomes a man, he's adopted into the world of men, and in that world of men, men tell the boy, watch out for this, look at this, don't be fooled by that. And so there's a treasure trove of wisdom from their fathers and their fathers' fathers, and the men only are, they're alone in their own space without the women. That's when they bring the boy in, right? And they're usually out somewhere on the outskirts. And in that space was the manosphere. That was a manosphere. You got your uncle, you got your brother, you got your friend's cousin, grandfather, and then you got your great grandfather, and they're all there and like, listen, boy, don't let this fool you about women, right? Because for us, there's so much confusion around women because that's where we've been most perverted. But they were teaching them about women. They were teaching them about God. They were teaching them about hunting. They were teaching them about nature. They were teaching the boy all the most important things about life. And of course, women and family was a part of that. It's always been a part of that. How could it not be? We bring women in so that we can have a future. Here's the future. Let's teach them about women. So, but we lost all that. We lost all that when we, I mean, we lost it a long time ago. It really hasn't existed much until the manosphere. And the manosphere, look, I think the manosphere on the internet is also a birth out of different attempts by men to get in touch with something within them. Have you ever read Iron John? So in the 1970s, 1960s, 1970s, after like during the Vietnam War, men were starting to change like spiritually. And they started this is when we started getting in touch with our feminine side. This is when men started getting in touch with their feminine side during the Vietnam War. And they would say, like, you know, women say yes to men who say no to the war, right? There was this whole new adoption of women's values for men in the 1960s. By the 1970s, men were disenchanted with it. They were like, what happened? I did this, you know, and I totally lost myself. I did this. When I say did this, they became the man that women were telling them that they wanted, but the women were completely misled as well. And so there was in the 1960s, flower power, you know, I don't know how close to that generation you are, but a lot of those people, they didn't make it out very well because there was a lot of drugs and sex and losing boundaries. Don't believe your father, don't believe in God. Like there was a cultural revolution, really. It was a cultural revolution, and not in a good way in America. So by the 1970s, men were like, what the fuck just happened? They told me like to chop my dick off, metaphorically, and to behave this way. But ultimately you realize nobody likes nice guys. Women do not like nice guys. They might marry and make babies with a nice guy, but they're not interested, they're not attracted to you. They don't get wet for you, right? But they'll use you, right? And so a lot of these guys, they lost themselves, they lost the plot in life because they lost their masculinity. So if you ever get a chance to read the book Iron John, anybody listen to this is a book that is bred out of the mythopoetic men's movement of the 1970s. And they didn't have the internet back then, but that was a part of the manosphere. There were these men that were getting together in men's groups back then, and they were reading poetry, right? It's still a little soft, right? And if you ever meet any of the men that have been in this movement, you'll notice that they're still soft, but they know something's wrong. And so they're this book, Iron John, and Robert Bly and his King Warrior Magician Lover, the work of Robert Moore and Robert Bly are just, it's so instrumental to that sentiment, which I came across and enlightened me a tremendous amount about not just masculinity in me, but the stages of growth, the rites of passage, the hero's journey, because I had a midlife crisis, if you will. And I went into what is ultimately called the catabasis, or going down process that every man goes through, but nobody tells you. And so I learned that by reading Iron John. So this is part of the manosphere. Now I know that the internet form of the manosphere came out of dating because boys wanted to figure out girls, right? Can't figure these damn girls out. Girls can't even figure out girls. So nobody's telling nobody anything, but there was a remnant, right? And so for what I understand, it all started in a like Reddit groups, and men are talking about pickup, men are talking about how to game girls, right? And this is where like guys like Owen, my buddy RSD, he came out of like that movement where like guys were teaching them how to like be slick with girls. But of course that evolves, and there's so many iterations up until where I find myself today, which is I think I'm at the pinnacle of the manosphere, because I'm talking about patriarchy. I'm talking about taking it all back, man, not just the pussy, not just our souls, taking it all back. Body, mind, soul, this whole life. And we've lost it. So that's the manosphere to me.
I love that passion. I'm so glad you said rite of passage, because I think a great thing about manosphere and manosphere content it is to a young man who doesn't have a father figure. Hopefully there's guys that can guide him to the rite of passage. Guys like you, for sure. Now I'm going to ask you the $1 million question is, how has the manosphere failed men? And this is a real important question. I've asked this a lot.
Well,
I think it's a tough one for a lot of people.
I don't think it has. I think if you allow the manosphere to fail you, that means you put too much stock in something outside yourself. This is just information. We are just fallen men. Like I talked about David and Solomon. The men that you hear from, I am a father figure. I know by default, because men will look up. But I make no bones about the fact that I'm a sinful man. And I put my sins right out on there, right on the screen, and people can see me. I lose a lot of quote unquote fans because they see, wow, Elliott's not perfect. I thought he was. So I'm not even familiar with too much of the drama and negativity in the manosphere, because I don't see it for that. That's Satan sneaking in and trying to discredit something that's credible and important. Not just credible, but important. So I turn my eye, and maybe I turn my eye too much, but I just don't see. I'm like, whatever, this is dumb, right? But that is outshined by the good that it's doing. Waking up ain't easy, right? So if you get enrolled with these ideas and you're learning them and you're evolving, but then the characters in the show do or say something that turn you off, and you drop the whole thing altogether, then you deserve to lose, because you're so stupid that you mixing up the messenger with the message. And that's a part of the problem, because the men that was giving us the message when we were pure, I don't want to say pure, but before we living the way we live right now, right? It was a father. So not only is the message important, but it's the person is important. That is my father, and that's my grandfather, that's my uncle, and that's my cousin, and that's my tribe members. These are my culture. These are my people. We know they love me, and I love them, and I know them. I come from them, right? So men have this sense that we want to attach to that because we deserve it. But when you hear the message, that man is not your father. He's not really your father. He really don't know you. You probably have very different values. And he's also a fallen man. And he's a fucked up man. He's going to say dumb things. Take what you can learn. Like Bruce Lee said, right? Take what's useful. Leave the rest. I know I say some shit that some people just need to leave. Just drop it. Okay, Elliott, I was with you up until that. That's okay. I'm not asking you to follow me. I'm just saying, hear me out. We're having a talk.
That's great. Well, I think you put it really well, because I think what you said, if I want to preface what you said basically, is take the message, but I think what people do is really focus on the messenger rather than the message. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get that
in a long-winded way.
Yeah, but no, that's a great way to put it. I think that there's a lot of guys that do deliver great content, and what I try to do in my own life is pull the net positive out of what people say versus the negative. And what I found out in the manosphere, though, is that when somebody says something's negative, I find out that a lot of times it's the word negative aligns with they've just been told the truth. Does that make sense to you? In other words, I've just been told the truth, but I'm going to call it negative. So I do find that a lot in the manosphere. So that's a little bit.
Yeah,
I think,
well, so there's guys, but we're still effeminate, right? We're doing our best. We're doing our best. When you mix up facts with feelings, you know you're still acting like a fag. So it's you got to forgive people. You got to be able to see through it and just be like, you know, hopefully you repent and turn over your ways. But for now on, from here on out, it's not a big deal. I don't know. I
yeah,
can't get mad at people.
yeah. I want to go into since you mentioned women, there's a couple things I do want to talk about when it comes to women. There's a lot of guys that are checking out. When I say checking out of the dating market, checking out of I'm not going to marry, I'm not going to get married. Okay, that movement, you've heard of the MGTOW movement, men going their own way, which
Yep.
I think can be a very positive message, very, very positive message for men when it's delivered the right way. Now, to me, there's been, I guess you would call it kind of a movement to leave this country and find your traditional woman in a different country. Do you think there's anything wrong with that?
It's about what I was talking about before. We want to go to where we know who we're dealing with. And if we come from a country where the women are still thinking, living, and behaving and honoring a traditional way, like if I'm Polish, right, and I'm living in the swamp of America with all these sluts and thoughts, and I just can't figure it out, why not go back to my fatherland and meet a traditional girl that's more of my DNA, right? And when I say that, I mean that literally and figuratively, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of mindset that I want, but it's also, listen, as it sounds strange coming from me sometimes as a mixed race man, but I think there's a tremendous amount of merit in sticking with your own kind. There's a lot of value in sticking with your own kind. There's no confusion, right? So why not, right? Why not? Why would I mess with something that I misunderstand and is causing me hell when I could go home?
Mm-hmm. And that's going to bring me to female nature. I mean, we hear a lot about female nature. My personal viewpoint of female nature is what you allow into your life. So that's my take on female nature. So if you want to kind of expound on that, go for it.
Female nature is what you allow into your life. That is beautiful. I mean, I'm still kind of following you on that. And the feminine nature is an allowing, is a yielding, it's an opening. That's what feminine nature really is. And so there are those who believe and those that don't believe, but according to Carl Jung, there's a feminine and there's a masculine within each man and each woman. He calls it anima and animas. And a way to live a well-actualized, balanced life is to acknowledge the opposite within you. And so to acknowledge the feminine, right, would mean exactly what you say. It's whatever I allow into my life. That when you allow shit into your life, you're like a vagina who's having sex with nasty, bad, evil men, right? But when you allow good into your life, well, that brings life, that creates life. That's like opening yourself up as a woman to your husband, right? Two totally very different things. So what you said there is a mouthful. It's what you allow into your life. What kind of woman you allow into your life? What kind of hell you allow into your life? It's your allowing.
And that goes back to me, that goes back to accountability. And I know that when I see a man in pain or that's hurting, sometimes I have to realize, and I hope you'll agree with me on this, that a lot of times that man is in a tunnel vision. That is his life when he's in pain. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times in this umbrella, in this group, in this manosphere, we tend to trivialize a man's pain. But a man's pain is real. It's what he's seeing at that time in his life. So how we approach him is real important. I say on this channel, for me, myself, I don't give advice. I give support. And that's the only thing I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on that. So what's your take on when a man's in pain? I was talking to Anthony Johnson earlier today, actually, about this. And I said, some guys like myself, when something's going on in my life, my older brother, my father, my younger brother, they can give me a heart punch. Some guys can't take that heart punch. So how do you approach a guy that's in horrible pain and he's seeing that tunnel vision? That's his world. I don't want to say coddle a man. So how do you respond to a man that needs that kind of help, but is not used to a strong father, a strong uncle, that father figure that can shake him out of it? How do you respond to a guy like that?
Once again, I like your terms. You said heart punch.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that. And do you remember the scene that I drew for you guys earlier about my father and his brothers around the table shouting and, you know, having a good time? Heart punches. Heart punches do stuff like that. And so it's what I know, right? And so I will tell you this. I am much more popular when there's a screen between you and me than when we actually meet, because I realize that when I'm talking to somebody and I punch them in their heart, a lot of them can't handle it. So I just keep my mouth shut. I usually just keep my mouth shut. Because my heart punches come with a snap. So that's why I give advice, right? I give my opinion on YouTube because it's not personal. And that's the problem. People take things too personally. It's too much about me. So if Elliott's saying it to a screen, wow, that really punched me in my heart, but it's okay because it's just a video. Well, if you come and ask Elliott your question legit and we looking face to face and we're having a conversation and you're looking for a solution because that's what men do, call it a heart punch, call it hard love, right? But it's what you're asking for when you come to me. Yeah, I have compassion, but I'm gonna punch you in your heart.
And that's, yeah. I mean, when people come to you, they know they're going to get Elliott. You know, so
right, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Don't come to see me if you're not ready for it.
Yeah,
that's one thing with my dad too. He's the same way. He says, "Don't come to me for advice if you're not ready for it."
That's great the way you put that. I really like the way that was way you stated that. I'm gonna kind of, this is gonna lead me to my next question before I bring on a couple panel guys. Is when is violence necessary?
Violence, when is it necessary? Well, my gut reaction is it's always necessary. So it depends on what you mean by violence. But whenever something needs to get done, like for example, I exacted tremendous violence on my body today in the gym, right? I am exacting violence against my weak self when I discipline myself to do something I don't want to do. Violence is an attitude. Violence is an attitude. I think of a sword and I think of decisiveness. Violence and decisiveness. I don't know if the words have some etiology, but it's about being able to cut things, right? What's somebody who's violent? Well, they have a knife. They're ready to slice things, right? And so that means setting boundaries sometimes, right? Like, no, I don't go to bed past midnight, right? That's exacting violence. That's being discerning. That's the word I'm looking for. Also, that's another one that goes with it. But that's violence. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that violence, you have to chop somebody's neck, right? Because if you're in a situation and it's in a situation that is just going to get physical, then you got to be able to take that same sword and chop that dude's neck. So he's chopping parts of your life out. Any man who's wielding a sword in his life, which should be all men, should be violent. Violent gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with Ivan Throne. I know you met Ivan a few times, I'm sure, at 21. And I had asked Ivan that question, and we were talking about basically the situation of the world in our country right now. And I asked him that question, when is violence necessary? And his response was, when you've had enough. And he followed that up is, nobody wants to be first. Nobody wants to be the first one. And I think that's part of our weakness in our country, that nobody wants to be first. No one.
Well, first, what would be required?
Well, when I say first, I mean like the first one to stand up against like BLM or places like that. Nobody
Well,
wants
there's
to do
people
it.
standing up. There's
Yeah.
lots of people standing up. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
people standing up. It's cool. It's cool to see people. But to be the first one, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
That's definitely a tough situation, right? Like, because you're looking around, you're like, am I the only one that think this is some bullshit? And then you got to step out there. Yeah, that requires a lot of courage.
Yeah. I mean, I went to I did a kind of a documentary on a protest just down the road from me, half mile down my road in my town, which I never thought would happen. And I brought my camera and my tripod and went and did it. I mean, I was told don't go there, but I went and did it. I stood in my own community with a camera and I photographed it. I filmed the whole thing. So to me, I was the only.
What was it? It was BLM.
It was a BLM. There was Antifa and everybody else was there. So, yeah, they closed the Walmart near me for the first time ever. So, but to be honest,
where do you live?
I live on the beach over on the East Coast. So, yeah, it was
really. So that was here in Florida.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I have a video.
That's not going to last very long here.
No.
I remember they tried that shit in St. Pete too. I think it's a show. I think it's an act. I think they're putting on some kind of act.
Yeah, and the funny part was when the news had reported the event, and the news had said there was 150, 200 people there. Well, when you watch my video, you'll easily see probably 1,500 or more. So their news reporting their news reporting wasn't as accurate as mine. So,
damn, yeah. So you're like a journalist, guerrilla journalist.
Yeah. Well, that's what I did. I've never did it before, so I decided I was going to do it. So, and I did a little.
Were you the first? Were you the first guy out there? The only guy out there doing that?
I was the only guy out there doing that. Yeah. So.
Whoa. Yep. You had some courage. That's why they told you don't go.
I was told not to go, but I decided I was going to do it anyway. So, but it was my first documentary. I thought it was pretty cool to do, and I actually had kind of I'll call it an adrenaline rush when I was there. It was exhilarating because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I went and did it anyways. So, but what I'm going to do now is I know we're going to wrap up here shortly, but I'm going to bring on Primal Man. And I'm going to bring on Gonzo because I know these guys are dying to talk with you. Primal Man, are you there? Let me bring on Gonzo. And there they are.
Yo, I'm here.
All right. So you guys, Primal Man and Gonzo, it's your time. Talk with Elliott.
Let it rip, Gonzo.
You got your mic muted,
Gene,
Gonzo.
I was just about to say you should get started. You should lay down your smoke.
Nobody want to be the first.
I had a couple of things. I was, something I like about Elliott is that a lot of people when they first found Elliott, they really enjoyed his way of finding your purpose, finding your passion, do what you love, righty? And now what I really enjoy now is that his message has sort of evolved into do what you got to do every day, one day at a time. It don't always have to feel good. Get out, put your head down, and work. How's it go? Work, lift, and pray. I love that. And I love it, because I work with my hands too. I'm a lawn guy, cut grass for a living. I'm self-employed. Of course, I do the weights and all that too. But I love that. Sometimes I'm having a bad day. I tell myself, work, lift, and pray. Just go out there, put your head to the plow, and go at it. I love that though. That's a good message to put out, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I had to learn that. I had to learn
I
that.
won't
My message evolves because I learn stuff as I go along. So it's funny to
That's
hear
right.
you say that, because when you started talking about passion, you remind me of my younger me. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like younger E back when I was fresh and clean, green. And so, but I was nodding, and immediately, because I know that you must know that that's no longer a go. That's cool. That's fine for a season, for a stage in your life. But you got to grow the fuck up. And growing the fuck up means you got to do shit you don't want to do every day. That's just life.
Mm-hmm. And there's something, and there's something special about sacrifice. I like sacrifice. It's something that should be sacred. And getting up and going to work and working with your hands one day at a time is a sacred act. And I really resonate with that a lot. So
you're from New Orleans. There's a lot of Catholics in Louisiana.
Yes, that's right.
Are you Catholic?
I'm not Catholic. I'm Protestant. my background is Pentecostal. Imagine that, right?
Okay.
Holy rollers.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Catch the Holy Spirit. Baptized in the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a Pentecostal guy on YouTube I really like, Derek Prince. He makes he gives some of the best sermons. Yeah, he's Pentecostal, but he doesn't do all that, but he knows the Bible so well. The reason why I ask you that is because Catholics love suffering. I learned a lot about life when I started studying the Catholic faith. Catholics like to suffer, right? Because I mean, just if you notice the difference between a Protestant and a Catholic, one of the differences is a Catholic wears a crucifix. That means the dead, bloody body corpse of Christ is hanging on that cross. Protestant cross is clean. That's just a symbolic of the sacredness of the suffering. It's Christ's passion, but it's our passion. And so every time we get to suffer, one guy calls it mortification. We mortify our flesh, and we can offer it up as penance. Like, yo, Lord, my Lord died on that cross in that bloody corpse. I can handle his back breaking, weeding in the garden for another 2 hours, or work.
Me and Gonzo have a little podcast, and we do what we call religious maxing, and we talk about the Bible, we break it down, we read scripture, we do all these things, and we all know that the Christian church has been corrupted. Catholicism, Protestant, all of these sects are all corrupted, and it got me thinking. I said, well, if someone wants to attend church, because I believe I was raised in church. I got out when I was probably, 25, stopped going. Recently, with the shutdowns of everything, I realized, hey, we got to sit in a church pew. We got to get back in person in church. And so I've been going back to church, and it sort of got me thinking, or smoking on, as we say, how does one find a good church? And with all the corruption, right, with all the bad translations of scripture and all of these different things. And I was speaking to Gonzo about this, and I said, a church that has love, God is love. And so you say, you don't see a whole lot of love, especially in Catholicism. So I would say, if you could find a church where the people have love, and I'm not talking about, like you're feeling your mama's love. I'm talking about that heavenly fatherly agape love. And this is just something that me and Gonzo have talked about a lot. You asked me about Catholics in New Orleans, and I recently spoke to my girlfriend about this. I said, and she's Catholic, her family's Catholic. I said, imagine if I walked into a Catholic church and I said, I'm sick with the coof, and I'm not doing well, and I can't go to the doctor. I come here for God. I said, they'll send me packing. They'll send me with a one-way ticket out of there, right? Straight to the hospital. I said, now let me tell you. So the Protestant, the Pentecostals, you show up at their front door and you say, hey, I need a healing. I need God to do something with the coof that I got. You're going to have 4 to 6 guys all on you, praying with you, hugging on you, spitting on you, and all kind of stuff. So I said that to me means a lot. And if you can find a church where you have that brotherly love, To me, that's amazing. But I wanted to just sort of bounce that off of your question about the Catholics enjoying suffering. I got no beef with Catholics. I love Catholics. I think
Well,
their
we
buildings are beautiful.
we have
Mhm.
our number one Catholic, Polly Jack Daniels, on here,
Yeah.
and I do want anybody to know is that we've got about an hour or so with Elliott. So if you want to come on live and ask Elliott a question, now is your chance. So hit that StreamYard link and you can talk with him live. So Polly Jack Daniels, I'm going to welcome you. Polly, good to see you. I know we talked earlier about living. I guess
Yeah.
it was kind of funny because my thumbnail said live with Elliott Hulse, and Paul had joked about live with Elliott Hulse. He asked how much is the rent. So, but it is live with Elliott Hulse. It's not live with Elliott Hulse. So, Paulie, I want to introduce you to Elliott Hulse live, and if you have a question for him, hit him up. So,
Thank you very much. I remember when I first met you guys, Primal Man sent me one of your posts, Elliott, of you praying the rosary. And that's when I became a fan. I was like, this guy's cool. This guy's praying the rosary. So I wanted to ask you about, what do you think of the whole thing that's going on right now with Pope Francis and his letter to the churches saying that they have to ask permission from the bishops and from the Vatican in order to do the traditional mass and all of that? What do you think of all that?
Yeah, this is a big question between the two of you, because it comes to the credibility of the church, and there's no question that the church has been subverted. It's been subverted for a very long time. I mean, the Catholic Church doesn't even represent today what it did 100 years ago. And let me just kind of like back up a little bit, because that wasn't beautiful either. But we've been told a story about it that maybe wasn't necessarily true. So when it comes to what Primal Man was saying before, I want to address that because it's so important. Mm-hmm. The church is done. It's shot. But you got to remember that what the brothers that are hugging those guys are doing and trying to exorcise that demon was an institution. It was a part of the Catholic institution to do exorcisms. Exorcisms was how to exorcise these demons. So when somebody would come in, they should be taken along a path where they could have that performed for them. But the church is so intertwined with the state right now that there's liability and they can't do shit like that. The Catholic Church is very much government. They like the other denominations are not nearly as integrated with the government as the Catholic Church is. The Catholic Church has got problems. Love. To me now, when you say that the guy walks in and the guys that are, they want to pour that love onto him and exercise that demon or do a delivery, that's a beautiful thing. And I know you could see that with Pentecostals. Mm-hmm. I know that's the thing. That's why I fell in love with Derek Prince, because he had that same kind of heart. And you're right. If you were to walk into a parish, right, you would be met with some desk jockey, some administrator, and it would be much more of a cold experience. And then you would probably, depending on the parish that you go to, see the priest, and you'll go into the confessional, but he probably wouldn't even see you because you're not Catholic. You got to be Catholic first, unless he has a heart and he has love. I don't know. But then he would invite you into the confessional, and that's where the therapy would be enacted. There would be conversation, a talk. It's kind of crazy, man. I have a hard time trying to defend the Pope. I can't defend the Pope. They call him infallible, but it's ridiculous. It doesn't actually mean anything. What we think is infallible is very different from what that actually means. But then to see how he's destroying he's been destroying the church since he got in there, and then to see him trying to remove the traditionalist movement, which is the last remnant of the actual church. You go to a traditional church, a traditional Catholic church, TLM, or even like some of these like St. Pius X Society, SSPX. These are people that are practicing the faith the way it was meant to be. The Catholic faith created charity, right? Like it was the first institution to do like soup kitchens and even like all the universities. There was a lot of value there. So I'm kind of just ranting right here because the church has a devil in it for sure. It definitely does. And one of the ways that I've come to understand it through study is that the church is going through Christ's passion. The church is the body of Christ, so it's expected to go through the same passion that Christ had when he was living on this planet, when he was living here with us. And a part of the passion required that he had a demon within his crew. He had his 12 disciples, but he had one. He had Judas. Judas was a demon. There was a devil inside the crew. And so where we are right now as a church passing through Christ's passion is there's a devil in the church. And he, ultimately how does it happen with Judas? Well, he's expelled. He's removed, but the whole story continues to unfold. So that's just like I just hearsay. I listen to YouTube videos. That's how I got catechized. I'll listen to freaking YouTube videos. That's how I learn, right? I don't have no special wisdom or a relationship with somebody. So that's where I am in trying to understand what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to welcome Jimmy Rizzo.
Hi there.
How are you from across the pond? Good to see you this evening.
Yeah. I've been listening to Elliott. He's like a breath of fresh air. He says it like it's real. You know what I mean? He's got all his heart and his feeling. And listen, the poor is just a dictator. He's somebody who was just like me and you. He goes to the toilet every day. He's no special person. The only people who's made him that special person is us, the people who put him on a pedestal to make him that way. It's like governments and things what are going on in the world today. But I do want to talk about the C thing, if you know what I mean, because when you mention the C word, YouTube catches the algorithm on what you've been taught about. But that thing, I'm glad it happened in 2019 or January, around about that time, because it's woke a lot of people up in the world who aren't really tuned in to the things what governments and companies do to us. And I'm just glad it's happened. I think you all know what I'm talking about. But Elliott, that was great what you said. Fantastic.
Well, Jimmy, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a few weeks, and I'm glad you're back on here tonight. I want to welcome Caduceus. Caduceus, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you, Tony.
Yeah. Any specific questions for Elliott?
I just hopped in. I'm here. You're having some interesting conversation. I just want to. I'll think of things that come to mind, but I appreciate Elliott for hopping on.
Yeah, I do too. Gonzo, we got to go to Gonzo.
Yeah.
We haven't gone to Gonzo yet. So, Gonzo, you got Elliott.
So I've got a question. Yeah, so I got to bring this up. So I know that, back in your bioenergetics days and you were doing the catharsis and that sort of thing, I want to know, like over time, and I know because earlier you were talking about suffering, right? And Catholics love suffering. And so I can imagine, when you're at least back when you were doing, that catharsis stuff, you'd be in like a state of suffering. And so I kind of how has that transformed into what you're doing now? What has replaced that? Is there a replacement for it? Does that make any sense?
I'm not really following your question. Say it again a different way.
Okay, so
say it again in a natural language, and somebody maybe don't put too many big words into what you're trying to say.
Well,
calm down, bulldog.
Right? So you're suffering, right? And so the movement and the expression, right? That's like the cope for the situation.
That's not suffering. That's not really suffering. Mm-hmm. That's release. That's not a suffering. What bioenergetics? There's no suffering in bioenergetics. Is letting go of suffering. Mm-hmm. There's freedom.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like you're letting go of something that was there. Yeah.
Yeah, a demon. That's how some people would have called it before, psychology changed all the terms. But yeah, there's bad feelings in our body. There's good feelings in our body. There's all kinds of emotion in our body. And according to the work of Wilhelm Reich, we begin to take on the character of the pain that we are experiencing, right? And that all happens through trying to stifle the breath. And that's a long story. It's a lot of crazy stuff. But basically what he says is, and which if you really feel into yourself and pay attention to life, will come to realize is that the body is the mind. What's going on inside the body is manifest in the muscular system. And so there's freedom that can come from acting like a kid. Kids don't have the same kind of hangups that we do as adults because they move more freely. They
exactly.
blah, 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 blah. They throw their arms around. They do temper tantrums. They'll jump and just do this, and they'll be okay with that, right? And then the adults say, stop that, stop doing that. What that's doing is releasing tension in the body. When kids laugh and when they play or they shout or they just act out, they're releasing tension. Well, how many times does the parents come and say, "What? Sit down, shut up, stop making that noise, dude"? And so all the expression becomes
exactly
trapped into the body because we have to hold ourselves back. And so it's a letting go. It's a freedom that's available if you can get your body to let go.
So are you still letting go in the same way, or has that changed?
No, I don't do bioenergetics anymore. I had my mentor died. Bioenergetics it's good theory when you're reading Alexander Lowen. Practice is a totally different thing. And I was working with a genius. He was Alexander Lowen's student and publisher of all of his books. So if you ever get a chance to read, Lowen wrote 12 books. The guy was a genius. And so I was working with Dr. Glazier twice a month, and he had me doing bioenergetics, legit bioenergetics. I can tell you all kinds of stories, but the bottom line is that there was a lot of release on his couch in his office from not talking therapy, but from breathe, Elliott, keep breathing deeper, breathe, move, now, shout, let it go, all kinds of shit like that. Or hold this towel above you and then say mama. Or like
you know what
crying
that,
and shit.
You know what that's about?
Huh?
It's like not taking a pill from these pharmaceutical companies who are throwing them down your throat and doing things naturally.
Yeah, but this is a lot of work. This is kind of crazy stuff. I would have to lay on this guy's mattress for like 2 hours, and then I walk out of there feeling like I have a buzz. It's wild stuff. I don't know. It's wild stuff.
It sounds like communism.
The first experience I ever had with that was when I was in New York City. I hired this woman. I went to a workshop. It was a 21-day active meditation where you just like shouting and doing like that Pentecostal stuff. It was like it was a Pentecostal church. That's right. Catching it. It was wild. It was a lot of that stuff to music and stuff. Very physical, very emotional.
Very emotional. That's right.
For a session. And I hired her for a private session, and she did my very first, I didn't know what it was at the time, but bioenergetics session on me. Let me tell you what happened. She had me in there, right, in the office. First, I was bent back in the bow position, right, like you may have seen me do in some of my videos, my mouth wide open and my eyes wide open. Breathing and shit like that for like 10 minutes. And then she takes me over to a mattress, face down. Long story short, she tells me start humping the mattress. She's like, sock your hips into it. So I'm here breathing heavy, humping his mattress. 5 minutes later, I break into laughter like I've never laughed before in my life. I don't think I ever laughed that hard and that long. It was like spasmodic laughter, and I was crying and all that shit. And I'm trying to like apologize to her. I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing. I don't know what the fuck just happened. But she knew what happened. She's like, she explained to me that you had trapped in your pelvis feelings of joy. And I'm like, and we humped it out of you. She didn't say that, but all that movement and like breathing broke it out. And then,
We
and then
humped it out with
it
you.
created
Humped it out.
a new freedom for me in my life.
Huh.
There was something that was let go. So look, Primal
Gonzo.
Man.
Oh,
No, Primal Man. Yeah, this stuff almost like there's the charismatic movement in the Catholic Church is a lot like Pentecostalism. And Pentecost, I have a friend who's into that, right? And he knows Pentecostal, but he's a charismatic. He's working so hard to try to bring bioenergetics, like the understanding of bioenergetics, into praise and worship of the Lord.
Elliot, I didn't even know what bioenergetics means. I didn't even know what it's about.
well, hang on and listen.
Well,
He'll tell you.
If you heard everything I just told you, that's it right there. That crazy
Yeah.
dump
I heard
that I just dropped on this mic. That's what it is. That's what it is. But it may
be like
be
giving somebody a releasing something that you're not.
it's an
happy with.
orgasm. It's legitimately an orgasm.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
Wilhelm Reich.
like
Yeah, it's when you say release, it reminded me that Wilhelm Reich called it the orgastic wave. He says that there's a movement in the body from the pelvis to the tip of the head that's like a snake, right, up our spine. When we watch a baby move, if a baby like crawls or a baby's like moving on his head, the baby still retains that orgastic wave. It's a softness in the spine that allows energy to move up. And so he called it the orgasm reflex. So anytime like you have a bioenergetic release, like you said, release, he likened it to an orgasm because in order for that to happen, that movement has to be restored in the body so that there's a release. And it looks very much like when you're having sex, right? When you're having sex, what are you doing? You're doing this. So you're waving the body and then you have that release.
I guess that would make sense because when you're born, you're just all caved forward, and then those two curvatures in your spine that stick out are actually formed after your birth from crawling and doing that same motion that you're talking about. Yeah. And then if you think of your fascia as like a tight suit that's around all your muscles, all your tissues, everything, making compartments. If you pinch one corner, you feel it on another part of the body. So you might be onto something there.
Yeah,
there's a whole lot to it, and I'm just not smart enough to dig into it because as you go into the world of fascia, this is all they're very much linked because it's all one thing. That's as far as I can say. I have all these books I wish I could read and put together, but I was for a while obsessed with trying to show that the body is the mind. The body is the mind. It's all happening in our tissue.
Yeah, well, just to add a little context, about myself, I'm actually a first year in osteopathic medical school. So, like one of our courses, in addition to what the MDs will do, we have a course that's all about fascia and like rearranging a lot of the physical stuff similar to what you're talking about.
A little bit. Yeah, you guys are not as establishment as the MD. There's a lot of
we're gonna be DOs.
Wisdom. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah,
I consider Caduceus our resident medical expert on our show. So
not quite yet, but I'm working there.
I do have a question for. I've got somebody else backstage here shortly because it is. I don't know how much time you can give us, Elliot, but I am going to. I want a quick question here. I don't want to miss Big Ben's question real quick. If you want to answer that. Let me see. For some reason, StreamYard are super slow right now. I have no idea why. Yeah.
So you want me to read that question?
Yeah. Can you see it?
Okay, cool. I'll do it.
It says,
I can do it.
Do you see any entrepreneurship routes that make 40K plus a year that aren't too demanding on time and body? I'm trying to meet my bills while having enough time and energy to make greater plans. So there's the question.
That's a tall fucking order. You basically say, I want to make $40,000 a month, but I don't want to do nothing. That's basically a question.
If Elliot knew the question to that answer, he would be doing that himself.
Well, isn't just like living life in general hard on your body in general, and you got to work it out? Like even if you just sit in a chair all day, that's hard on your lower back. That's hard on your neck. All that stuff.
I'm going to bring on.
I have sciatic arthritis. I find it hard to stand up from sitting down.
I'm going to bring on